This is going to be a much shorter video than the last one. I just want to follow up by saying one more thing in response to the comment that Geigenzaehler left on the last post. And it's clear from his comment that he was trying to draw down arguing against me and kind of disengage. And I want to be clear, Geigenzaehler, that you did more good than harm. I am glad that you spoke up in the ways you did, even though a lot of your arguments were full of shit, because there are certainly other people out there who think like you do, and you gave me an opportunity by engaging in this stuff to actually present the arguments against this stuff and to show how absurd your position is. And if anything, I was very glad to get that kind of engagement on the blog, on the videos as I made. And also, as you told me before, you spent so much time reading the whole blog, so I'm grateful for all that engagement. And I also appreciate that part of the message that you were putting out there in that blog post was that you thought you had been too cruel earlier and you wanted to take back that cruelty. So I appreciate the honesty and goodness of that part of the message. But there is still one thing that I feel like I really need to draw attention to that is completely wrong in what you said. And it is in part 3 of your comment. I'll put the exact text in the description of this video. Their justification and my perspective are mostly shaped by direct quotes from your blog and not even by their testimony. Okay, so what you're saying in that particular sentence is that the reasons I was banned from Scrabble was because of specific things that I admitted to, things that I said that I did in my particular testimony. And what you are doing there is really echoing the exact same thing that NASPA said in their decision against me, which was literally in the first paragraph of the September 23rd letter I got from NASPA in 2022. And I will also put a link to that in the description here. We've determined largely through your own submissions that at least 3 of your actions were in violation of Section 2 of NASPA's Code of Conduct. So I want to be very, very clear here. You are an absolute stupid moron if you believe that. You are showing a lack of insight into human nature, a lack of ability to read between the lines and understand this situation. No one on the NASPA board that suspended me even believed that. I am 100% sure that when they were in their meetings discussing this and coming to the decision, no one was saying David is telling the truth about everything and these people are lying about everything and we're only going to go by his words. And oh, by the way, what his words did showed that he did something so wrong and should have been suspended. That is not what happened in the least here. It is very much the case that people sided against me before I'd even given my side of the story because of their emotional alignment to the Clinchies or Lola or women in general, or emotional alignment against me or whatever it happens to be, whatever emotional buttons were pushed there. And they did not believe me or didn't care about my side of the story enough, didn't care about the fact these other people were the abusers. They just decided that they had to be against me and ban me from the fucking game. Why was that actually written in that letter from John Chu? I am sure that it is not in any way representative of the conversation that was had in those meetings, in that vote. It is because John Chu is a rational person who understands that these people lied through their fucking teeth. And the lawyers he surely hired to look at this understood that too, that they were possibly guilty of defamation, that they hadn't shown I had done anything wrong that was actually worthy of suspending me, but they wanted to suspend me anyway. And they further saw that doing so based on clearly defamatory words could have gotten them in trouble and tied up in a defamation lawsuit. So they specifically wrote the lie that my particular statements showed some sort of guilt on my part to make a false idea out there that it had nothing to do with the defamation that I got suspended, to keep themselves away from that lawsuit and try to avoid any legal trouble that might happen because of it. That is all that is. That is lawyer gobbledygook, people trying to obscure the real story and paint this other fake story over it just to keep themselves away from a lawsuit. And quite simply, if you actually do believe my entire story, if you recognize how much they are false, and everything they said is a lie, and you go into this saying Dave is telling 100% truth and they're telling 100% lies, you have no logical way of arriving at the conclusion that I should have been banned from Scrabble. That is an impossible position, and I know that very fucking well. I know that my friend Augustine Aga, for one, he's not the only one, he read over all of my documents before I submitted it to NASPA, and he literally told me there is no way that they can suspend you based on what you've written here, right? He knew it. Other logical people knew it. Other people who weren't hopelessly biased against me knew it. I did a perfect job in all of those documents that I submitted at the beginning of September 2022 of showing that there was zero guilt on my part and this story was entirely phony baloney. And even the way that John Chu and NASPA responded to it made obvious they didn't have this justification, because they gave that sentence saying at least 3 of my actions were in violation of Code 2 of Section 2 of the Code of Conduct. What 3 actions? They never named those 3 actions. And then when I and my lawyer went back to them and said, please name those 3 actions, they refused to give an answer. It was clear this was gobbledygook lawyer speak that was designed to cover everything up, to be obscurantism, and just save themselves from a lawsuit. It wasn't until a year after this that John Chu actually deigned to give me the supposed reasons for my suspension. And if you go back and read that later, that was only after their arms were twisted and they finally had to say something, and they probably did defame me in that second letter when they finally spoke up a year later, but also the number of things they listed didn't even add up to 3, right? It was in no way consistent with this. It was, we are getting caught in our lies and called out and keep being screwed against the wall tighter and tighter, so we're gonna keep putting more bullshit excuses out there, more reinterpretations of reality that are fucking fake, just to make Dave look like the bad guy and keep ourselves away from legal trouble. And that is what this entire story is about. Quite simply, the Clinchies hated me, and some of their friends might have too, but I wasn't even trying to be in their community. I was trying to play Scrabble across oceans and other places. I was doing everything I could to stay away from them, and there was no one outside of North America who wanted to even stop me from playing in tournaments there. I would have been totally welcome. The only reason any of this shit bled over from North America to the rest of the world are the actions of 2 people, John Chu and Chris Lipe. They are the ones who, through their actions, influenced people internationally and got me banned from tournaments along the rest of the world too, which is the only place I was trying to play. I wasn't even trying to play for any of these North American organizations. And why did they do it? Well, the main reason John Chu did it is because he knew he had broken the law. He knew he had defamed me. He knew he had done dishonest things. And if a whole true story got out there, that it could actually eventually catch up with him, and he and his organization could be in legal fucking trouble. So he has to play the role of this whole lying story having any kind of truth to it, because he is afraid of anyone ever admitting the truth of the house of cards falling down and them actually being liable for all the fucking damage they did to me. And the same is true for Chris Lipe. I think Chris is still petrified that if everyone starts to believe the really fucking obvious story of how the Clinchies defamed me, that the Clinchies are actually in massive fucking legal trouble. And he possibly could be in legal trouble too. But that's what it comes down to. Chris is now obsessed with keeping a cover on the truth and keeping everyone believing his fucking lies, keeping this lie alive for fucking ever, because he doesn't want consequences to catch up with him and with the Clinchies. And quite simply, no one on the NASPA board even believed that shit about they only banned me for reasons of stuff that I admitted there. That was shit that John Chu's lawyers made up. And what you and anyone else is doing here is saying, you know what? I'm a person who thinks I believe in rationality, but I'm not really rational. I just like them or hate Dave, whatever it is, and I'm going to make them the good guy. I'm going to make him the bad guy. I'm going to search through the wording in their documents. I'm going to pick out their arguments, and I'm going to use those, and I think that I'm actually writing something that resembles reason. I think I'm writing something that resembles an actual erudite debate and shows that Dave is wrong. And what you are really doing is proving you are a fucking gullible idiot who can't see the really obvious fact that the exact argument you're giving was written by John Chu's lawyers to cover up his wrongdoing. Now, We can go our separate ways, that's fine, but I'm glad you actually gave me an opportunity to point this out, because the same is not just true for you, it is true for literally anyone else in the Scrabble associations that wants to make this fucking ridiculous claim. Anyone who ever believes that is a stupid, stupid fuck who is taking the side of these lying fucking idiots, and I disdain all of you. What this community should have done, if it had any brains, if it had a capability to see it the right way, and if it had any fucking ethics, was spoken up on my behalf, was called out the horrible fucking wrongdoing of the Clinchies, the way they attacked me, the way they fucking slandered me, how god-awful it was, how they need to be punished for it, and how we as a community have a need to speak up for Dave in his defense. And you all did exactly the opposite. You took a situation where these people that are abusing me horribly, and you sided with the abusers and against the abused because you didn't like the abused enough. And that is the sick fact of human nature. Most people do not give a shit about abuse unless it happens to a person they love. It doesn't matter how bad the treatment is, how unfair it is, how destructive or harmful it is. If it's not somebody I love, I don't give a fuck. It's okay. If anything, I'll learn to hate them and dehumanize them more so I don't feel bad about what happened to them. And that is what's happened here. There are so many people in this story who actually were on my side, who actually did call the Clinchies' bad behavior out at some point, such as Terry and Stefan and Shelley, such as Brian Bowman, who ended up completely fucking reversing positions eventually and getting on the side of the fucking abusers and cutting me out of their fucking lives. Why did they do that? Because they saw the way the wind was blowing. They saw the fact that these evil fuckheads were winning the popularity contest, and they're continuing to speak true things that showed what shitbags they were was only going to get them disinvited from Scrabble tournaments. And the majority of these fuckheads don't care about right and wrong. They don't care about the abuse that happened here. All they care about is pleasing enough people who are in power running these tournaments so they get to play the fucking game because they have no fucking moral backbone. By the way, I haven't shown it yet, but I've decided I am going to show it soon. I have a particular set of screenshots of a conversation long ago during this time period where NASPA was keeping me banned and refusing to even give me any real justification for why they banned me from somebody on the ABSP board. And this person on the ABSP board made it clear that it wasn't just that person's opinion, but in fact probably the opinion of the entire ABSP board, that this situation had been handled in a ridiculous way, that there were no valid grounds for keeping me out, and that the entire board wanted me to play. But you know what? As much as that person said some really, really nice things to me and said some things that really should be obvious to anyone who reads the story in an honest way, that person didn't want their words being made public. Why? Because they knew they were going against the prevailing winds, because they knew there were a bunch of bullies in the NASPA board, and that if ABSP stood against them, they were likely to get abused by the NASPA board in some way. Because that's what Chris Lipe and the rest of his bullies were doing. Chris is such a fucking hater, such a fucking liar, determined to keep this false story alive, that he wants to bully into silence anyone who stands up for me. He wants to get everyone to hate me and anyone who stands up for me. And I will tell you, Cesar and Mina can verify this is true. Cesar and Mina have experienced a whole bunch of bullying and ostracism from a bunch of their friends in the Scrabble community because they stood up for me, because they said the obvious things about the bad shit that happened to me, because that is how disgusting these bullies are. And you know what? I'm glad that this person spoke to me. I'm glad that I have the screenshots of this conversation. I actually think this person showed no fucking backbone by not being willing to let me make this stuff public. Because I did go and ask this person a long time ago if I could share these screenshots, and the person said no. And quite simply, if you had any moral backbone, if you were a decent human being, if you cared about right and wrong, you would be willing to say to the whole world out loud in a published way the exact same things you said to me in private. And the fact that you'll say these things to me in private about how much I'm being wronged by the Scrabble associations, but you won't make it public, tells me you're a fucking coward who is okay with the bullies winning. It's disgusting behavior. It's disgusting fucking cowardice, and it needs to be called out too. That is why I am suffering in this situation. Not only because the bullies have done what they've done, but because there's so many other people who are unwilling to speak truth to power, who are willing to live the lie just not to get attacked by the bullies themselves. And fuck all of you for your cowardice. So guess what, Natalie Zolti? I will be sharing those screenshots eventually.